Welcome to the Asking Why podcast. I'm your host, Clint Davis. I'm a marriage and family therapist and licensed professional counselor trained in trauma and addiction. The Asking Why podcast is for anyone on a journey of healing and restoration. If you are searching for answers to life's questions and want to learn more about root causes from a psychological and theological mix, this show is for you. In this podcast, myself and a co-host from Clint Davis Counseling and Integrative Wellness will interview guests on a wide range of topics in order to get down to the heart of the problems facing our world and understand why things happen and how to change the world and ourselves for the better. Want to learn more tips and tricks to living a healthy lifestyle? Visit us at Clint Davis Counseling and Integrative Wellness on Facebook and Instagram. If you want to meet our staff or book a speaker, go to clintdaviscounseling.com. Thanks for listening and be sure to subscribe today. Putman Restoration is a proud sponsor of the Asking Why podcast. Putman Restoration specializes in commercial disaster services, including water damage, fire, smoke, mold, and storm. Their goal and desire is to get your properties up and running as soon as possible after disaster strikes. Hospitals, schools, hotels, and large municipal buildings. Malls, churches, and large commercial properties are their specialty. Managed properties nationwide? No problem. Putman Restoration services their clients nationwide. They are strategically partnered with elite restoration companies throughout the U.S. and Canada, giving their clients resources during disasters where normal companies would be tapped out. Trust the professionals at Putman Restoration when disaster strikes. Visit them online at www.putmanrestoration.com or give them a call at 318-453-5029. All right, welcome to the Asking Why podcast. I'm your host, Clint Davis. I'm a little hoarse today, so y'all bear with me, but I had my friend Michael come on, and I was super excited, so I did not want to reschedule this. And Michael Trezza, he did TED Talk with me a couple of months ago. His came out. It's amazing, and so we'll talk about that some today. But, dude, I'm so glad to have you. We got to eat dinner together, and I got to spend some time with your family after the talk, and just you guys just loved on me and were there for me when I didn't have anybody around me at the time because my family wasn't able to go. So I just thank you for that. And what you talked about is so in line with so many of the things I talk about when it comes to technology, but it was also new information and so different than some of the ways that I talk about it. And so thank you for coming on, and I hope we can have a fun, good conversation. So tell my listeners kind of who you are, what you do, where you're at currently, and then we'll kind of walk that back.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. It's been an amazing experience getting to know you and meet you a month or two ago. And I'm looking forward to speaking today. Thank you.
Absolutely.
My name is Michael Trezza. I live in San Diego. I've been a technology entrepreneur for the last 22, 23 years, maybe more at this point. Geez, I've been saying that for a while. And when my daughter was born 6 years ago, everything sort of changed for me, and I really realized that my responsibility to the world and responsibility to her was all different. And I decided to get involved in the education space because I saw that the world was changing faster than it ever has been before, and there were a lot of gaps in between how schools and I suppose society is preparing our kids to succeed and thrive in what I see as an incredibly dynamic future.
Yeah.
So starting in the technology space, and now an education entrepreneur, and I have a 6-year-old little girl. She'll be 6 in a month, and a beautiful wife, and we live in San Diego. And that's me.
Gotcha. What led you? Kind of tell me your story. Have you been from San Diego your whole life? What led you to where you are now? However much of that you want to talk about.
I'm from New Jersey originally.
Okay.
Born and raised in New Jersey. Spent summers down at the Jersey Shore and went to college in Maryland, University of Maryland, College Park. And I've always been interested in, and I've always been a climber, a camper. Loved the outdoors, loved hiking, and living in Brooklyn after college and Jersey City, there was this really like magnetic pull to not leave the city on weekends or to be outdoors for things. And it was really when I was in my 30s, it was just sort of it was rubbing me the wrong way. It just something felt really missing and out of alignment. So I decided I needed to move out west and really change things. And moving out west was a quality of life decision for me. Just a way for me to be more intentional about spending time with the things that gave me life, and energy.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so originally from New Jersey, and I moved to San Diego in 2009,
Okay.
and I opened an office in La Jolla, and that turned out to be one of the best decisions ever. My wife, who owned a company, she owned actually a number of learning centers in San Diego, and her office was directly next to mine. And she wandered in one day looking for some technology help, and I was all ears for that conversation.
You were happy to give her some help in
Yeah,
technology
for sure.
conversation. That's awesome.
Yeah, so she got lifetime tech support, and I got a beautiful wife and an incredible daughter out of that.
That's amazing. So did the
Yeah.
combination of her her learning center stuff and just what you had going on, how did that come together?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely, very much so. So, being a futurist and a technologist, and always, always being really interested and curious about how technology was influencing society and the world and our future, and then bringing that to the table, where she was very informed and interested in how we're educating our kids, how we're solving the problems of preparing them for their futures. So in those conversations, we just had, a lot of engagement around the gaps between those things. I would tell her about what I see is coming, and she would tell me, or she'd be so surprised at how we're not solving the problem of preparing them for what's coming. So yeah, that was absolutely the foundation, and it created it was the seeds of Giant Leaps right there.
That's right. So Giant Leaps is the company you have now, right?
Yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah, absolutely.
so tell us about that.
Yeah, so Giant Leaps is an after-school enrichment program for high school students. At this point, eighth graders on up through high school. And what we do, I like to think of what we do as future-proof kids. We want to get them engaged in the conversation about where the world is going. We want them to understand their strengths, really understand their strengths and their interests, and from that develop a sense of confidence and resilience. We want them to we want to give them what we call global awareness. So what that is an understanding and a curiosity about the forces at work that are changing the world. Right? What's the workforce going to look like? I've got a 6-year-old daughter. When she's 25, what's the world going to look like? What are her career options going to look like? How are we going to communicate? How is society going to be different? We want kids to engage in that conversation. We've got some really fascinating ways to allow that and prompt that. My picture is it's really going to be difficult to be relevant in the workforce of the future if you're not curious about it early on.
Yeah. So go
Yeah.
ahead.
I was going to say, and the third sort of thing, like self-awareness, global awareness, and the third thing for us is really critical thinking skills. So we want to give kids razor sharp critical thinking skills, the ability to find information online, the ability to discriminate between good and bad information, and then use that information to make better decisions. We think is a really, really important thing these days that is often not well taught in schools, and it's very difficult to test for.
Yeah. Why do you think, well, maybe not why you think, what are some of the barriers that you see, or maybe what are some of the huge gaping holes in education that you guys are trying to fill? I mean, I know obviously these 3 points, but
Yeah.
how?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest, most gaping hole, I suppose, from my perspective, is, and I like to say it this way, that school does a good job of showing kids where the world has been, but a pretty terrible job of helping them get curious about where it's going. Right. So I think that mismatch right there is maybe the biggest hole in education.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, there's bureaucratic issues and political ones, and then
So what are
and
some
then
of
it's
those?
it's just, well, I mean, it's a slow moving machine. It's an incredibly slow moving machine, and the world is very quickly moving and changing right now.
Right.
Right. So that
Outpacing.
mismatch. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. That mismatch is only becoming more and more magnified. That education can only move slow because of funding cycles, because of political interests, because of lobbyists, because of Listen, if you consider the United States public education system as one big company, no company can move that quickly
Yeah.
to adapt to how quickly the world is changing. But there are impediments to that I think are financial in nature, that are special interest group in nature. That, I mean, that's a whole different conversation.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of roadblocks to it actually solving the problems that we need to solve today.
So from your perspective, it seems like you would say, okay, that's moving too slow.
Yeah.
I feel like I have this passion put on me to help meet this need, and so instead of waiting for the school board or the school system or the government to get on board, I'm gonna do what I can do to help in that area.
100%. Yeah, absolutely. You know, I see a solution, and I see a solution that's working. When the kids that go through our program end up with these benefits that we've sort of articulated out of the gate, and it's really working. So when I see something like that, there's no other choice in my brain than make a run at it.
Right.
And when you look at history and business and things along those lines, you see that it's not that massive innovation and change is never and will never come from like within the slow moving
Systems that
I don't
be.
know exactly. It's
Yeah.
just not going to happen. There's no incentives for the educational system to solve this problem very quickly. It takes an Uber, it takes a Tesla, it takes a company from the outside to reason from first principles and look at it and say, listen, this isn't working. Let's be agile, let's be nimble, and let's solve some real problems here. And then hopefully the larger industry will take notice and start to adopt some of what we're doing.
Yeah, it's awesome. I saw recently, I do a lot of talks on safety and keeping kids safe online. And I think that's one of the problems we have in this area as well, is that we've outpaced everything with the phone. And we've, obviously given kids phones too early without giving them any kind of support or resources. But I was in writing the book, I was looking up new resources just like in the last month. And Bark, which is a parenting app for people that don't know that can protect your kid and send text messages and all that stuff. They came out with a Samsung Bark phone in the last couple months, and I didn't realize that. It just happened so quick. Yeah. But it's that's the sad part, right? Is that there's the suicide rate, the self-harm rate, the depression, the anxiety, the addiction is so high that these companies are like, oh, well, there's a market, for protecting kids, but the market had to be big enough for the product to come out. Does that make sense? So,
I get it.
I'm not saying that, whatever, I don't know Samsung's heart, but it's not, it wasn't out of the kindness of their heart.
It's not altruistic.
Yeah,
solution.
exactly.
But there's a market to be made money on here.
Yeah. If it was altruistic, then we'd go, hey, when we start this phone, we need to have all the safety things in place at the same time, because we're more concerned about the product helping our culture versus making profit.
Yeah. I mean, listen, it's no coincidence that Steve Jobs and the Facebook executives don't let their kids use this technology. Right. It's no coincidence. And if there were real altruism in the world, there'd be stricter controls. There'd be a lot more done to make these devices not babysitters for kids.
Yeah, absolutely. And very dangerous, abusive babysitters at that.
Completely. Yeah.
Okay, so what are some of the things with Giant Leaps, the benefits that you're seeing? You talked about global awareness, self-awareness, and critical thinking.
Yeah.
In what ways do you see those playing out in the kids that you're helping? And how would that be? Yeah. How would you like to see that kind of go into our culture?
Yeah, I mean, I'll give you an example that's really recent right now. One of the first students, so we've only been around for maybe about 2.5 years or so, and in that time we've done a number of pilot programs and had kids go through the program, and we've only really commercially launched, I don't know, 8 months ago or so. So we're still new. Yep. But early on, one of the early pilot program students that went through the program sent me a text message just 2 weeks ago, and she just got into a number of her top pick colleges, and one of them was UC Davis. And she texted me, and she was super excited to share. And she said, "Thank you. I think that Giant Leaps had played a massive role in me getting in me getting into college, and it was about her standing out in her college essays. And I thought that was amazing. And the deeper conversation is what we showed her, or what we gave her, was a different perspective on the world, an ability to ask really interesting questions and see herself in a different light. And that came through in her. It was a differentiator for her, because at the end of the day, there's a lot of 4.0 or 4 plus students that are doing volunteer work, and they're doing a lot of the same things, right? And colleges are looking at them and saying, well, how do we pick between these kids? And our program is a solution to that. It gives kids a real foundation of confidence, a real foundation of perspective of who they are. And let's forget that, because that's sort of feeding into the machine of education, right? Like getting a kid into college, but that's a great benefit. Really, what we want to do with these kids, and what our program does do, I think at this point it's 85% of the kids who have gone through our program have self-reported lower anxiety when they complete than when they started.
That's awesome.
That wasn't even an intended benefit.
Right.
It's a cool side effect. So what we help them do is see themselves. We help them see what the future, see around the corners into the future, and then paint a picture of themselves as a successful leader in that future. We want to get them asking better questions about, I know my strengths, I know my interests. How can I apply this to realize the vision that I have for myself?
Yeah,
And that's what we want to do. Another massive thing for us is we really want it. We want our program to be a catalyst for harmony is not the right word, but let's use it. Harmony or better relationships at home is one of the things that we see is often high school kids and kids in general. The communication at home can be really charged. It can be, especially when you're talking about grades, when you're talking about logistics, like, did you finish your college applications? Did you do your homework? How was school today? What'd you learn? Kids tend to really shut down in those conversations. So what we do is we give them avenues to connect on non-charged topics and allow them to develop these incredible like bonds and pathways to communicate, which is really beautiful to watch.
Yeah. So they do that with their parents?
Yeah. So what we do is we ask them to bring home a question every week, that we give them a prompt every week that they have to discuss with their parents and their family. And it forces them to develop this muscle of having conversations that are blue sky, that are interesting, and that are not about logistics, that are not about things that are going to make somebody shut down.
That's good, man.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's really cool.
Yeah, I see that a lot in, when you said blue sky, it's like kids need that space to question and ask. I did a talk Monday at a school, and we talked about technology and social media and the consequences and all this stuff. And yesterday I went back to talk to the younger kids, and the teachers were like, oh man, there was a buzz in class all day. Everybody's arguing and debating and mad at you. And, so I went back today and I was going to do a talk, and I had like 45 minutes, and instead I just opened the floor for questions. And so I just let them ask everything and just navigated with them through like, let's get to what I'm actually saying versus what you hear.
I love that.
And so it was so fun. And at the end of it, you could see like they were nodding, and I was like, okay, any more, have we, and I think as parents, we forget that our kids need just open space without pressure, without getting squashed, without being told, man, that's crazy, that's ridiculous, or without it always being around like works-based love, right? Like, did you do your homework? Did you make good grades? Did you clean your room? Did you do these things? And that automatically forces a kid into fight or flight, whether parents know it or not, because they're automatically going, man, my love, the parent might not be meaning to say this, but what they're communicating is our relationship is predicated on you doing what I need you to do.
Precisely.
And I'm going to be happy or not happy depending on if you follow, got the task list done. And I think it's beautiful what you're doing, Michael, because I've been telling parents for the last year, if you want your kid to be successful in college, it's not going to be their master's degree or their bachelor's degree or their GPA, or it's going to be this stuff, that they're emotionally intelligent, spiritually intelligent, and that they can have conversations with one another. So I think what you're doing is beautiful, and I think it's a huge need, man. I think, it's going to be blessed and grow and
important.
Yeah. It's awesome.
And there's this concept of discourse that's really built into the program, very with a lot of depth. And I feel like that's really missing from society.
Yes, today, talk about that, man. Preach.
Yeah. So the ability to hold a differing opinion from somebody and remain curious in the conversation. I have friends, colleagues that I don't agree with all their stances, their political positions, or their religious positions, but I can be curious, I can be empathetic, and we can have a real discussion where my goal is to learn about them and about their positions and just generally learn, right? And I think all too often today, society comes from a position or from a place of wanting to defend their position before they've even heard the other side, right? So what we do in our program is we help these kids develop this muscle of discourse, and it really is. And that's what we want them to practice that at home in a safe space. So we give them prompts that are engaging and maybe challenging on some level, that we hope there are differing opinions between the kid and the parent, and we give them guide rails and lessons and tools on how to remain curious in those conversations, things to ask, things to look for. What did you learn from that conversation? What did you hope to learn? And that's that's built into the program, and I think it's just so important to teach a kid and to have it start at home as well.
Yeah.
I'll give you a quick quote if I could.
Yeah, please.
Or a quick sort of mini case study. So one of the early actually it was Sasha who texted me about her acceptance. Her and her father, they're amazing people, both really, really smart, very, very stubborn. And they had maybe a bit of a contentious relationship, just two smart, stubborn people, just, butting heads. And she's a high school girl, right? After a couple of weeks in the program, one of the things that she said to me was, I loved going back to my dad every week and asking him all these questions about things that he loves to talk about. And they really engaged on that. And then on her father's side, at the end of the program, he sent us a testimonial. He said something to the effect, and I won't be able to quote it exactly, but I loved engaging with my daughter every week and I saw a side of her maturity that I hadn't been able to see before. And for that, I'm forever grateful. It was like that right there is like, that's the gold, right? That's a benefit of the program that's really difficult to articulate in a bullet point. But what we created was a pathway for this father and daughter to connect and start to build a relationship while giving them both really amazing skills that they can use forever and outside this relationship.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, I think what's hard for you is that what you're doing is educationally therapeutic. So you're using tools, you're fitting this interesting niche, and I'm just thinking about it like while I'm talking, but you're fitting this interesting niche where what you're talking about is stuff I teach people every day in therapy because no one's taught them how to do that in their family system.
Right.
And so, but you're shaping it into an educational realm and going, if the school's not going to teach emotional intelligence, if the school's not going to teach self-awareness, if the school's not going to teach these are as important, if not more important, than if they can do math and science.
Very much so.
And we've moved from that industrial revolution kind of survival mechanism, fight or flight, or, just in our culture, in our country of, especially America, of you've got to know math and you've got to know science or you're not going to make any money and have no career and not be successful.
Yeah.
And we completely, depleted our resources when it comes to all the arts and the things that you're talking about.
That's right. Yeah.
And so, but now we live in a totally different society that you can actually make money playing guitar. You can make these things. And I hope to God that we're switching our idea, although it is again, like you said, it's moving turning a barge, but the definition of success and what you're describing is hard to quantify, right? It's hard to go, when a company comes in and goes, we want to pay you money, but we need you to be an evidence-based practice.
Right.
Which is, I'm not saying it's not important, but their definition for success
is still skewed on those other things that we talked about, those outcomes that are measurable. How good did you do? How many grades did you make? How much did you show up?
Yeah.
And none of
Yeah.
those things actually deal with, is your relationship better? You
Right.
know, do you feel at more
Absolutely.
peace? Like, you know, are you more
Yeah.
content in
Yeah.
life? It's like, you
That's
can't
right.
possibly be content if you're not making six figures. You know what I mean? Just stuff like that. So
Yeah. Yeah.
that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I agree completely. And listen, we give kids access and to this through the lens of what I think is a really engaging topic, you know, like this interesting future, right? So everything from us is through this lens of the world is changing quickly. Let's explore that. Because it's going to be interesting, and that's what we really want kids to feel, is this curiosity and this awe and wonder about the future. Because I think all too often the message that they get is that the future is scary. And that's the exact opposite of what we want to program. And I mean that very like literally, like we really want to program that out of them.
Yeah.
Because yeah, sure. I mean, who hasn't heard of Chat GPT these days, and you know, and AI, and seeing what's happening in industries right now? You can choose to be scared about it, or you can choose to be really curious and interested and look for the opportunities in how it's changing how we live, learn, and work.
So for those of us who don't know what those things are, talk to me through, because that's one of the things that I was, as I, you know, listening to your TED Talk, and also read on your website and Facebook page and all that stuff. Talk to me a little bit about, for the people who don't know. I mean, I think more people are, you know, understand AI, but we'll get to that in a second. But talk about kind of Chat GPT's AI, and maybe one or two of the other things that you see coming in the future that the boomer or the zennial, whatever I am, you know, us, and then the older millennials maybe aren't even remotely ready for, because they're not even thinking about it. So can you talk about that stuff for a minute?
Absolutely. I believe, and a lot of futurists believe, that we are really very much on the precipice of something very massive right now.
Can you define futurist for me real quick?
Yeah, I mean, somebody who is just interested in the forces at work that are changing the future, you know, the technologies, generally speaking.
Gotcha. Okay.
And who makes a study of it, I suppose, and I would certainly consider myself that.
Yeah.
So I'd been asking myself for a year, up until before November, and I'll tell you why it's an important date. But before then, I'd been asking myself for years, what's going to be coming next that's going to have as much or as significant of an impact as the iPhone did, right? When you think about what the iPhone did, it democratized information. Let's call it the iPhone. It really the smartphone, but that was like the first commercial version that it just exploded things. Before that, and it's really the mobile internet. Before that, the access to information was not democratized. You either had to have a computer, you had to have access in various ways. You go to a library. It was more spread out and unstructured. And now with the smartphone, everybody has the same access to information as everybody else on some level. 93% of the world's population has mobile internet or smartphone.
It's crazy.
It's a massive shift in in 16 years that happened. It went from nobody to everybody having
2007.
That. That's right. That's right. That's a banner date. And the question I'd been asking myself was, what's next? What's going to have as significant of an impact? And I'd been looking at things, to your question, I'd been looking at things like genetic engineering, life extension. There's people spending billions on reversing aging right now and curing aging. And they're making a lot of progress, which is kind of freaky, but it's here. Things like virtual reality, artificial intelligence, autonomous driving, all these 3D printing, all these technologies that are sort of poised to shift the landscape. Cryptocurrency, it's a massive one. It's kind of like a mess right now.
Yeah.
But it's not a smart move to think that that's going away at any time. Its implementation currently is a little bit broken. It's not going away. In any case, so I've been asking
NFTs, all that stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Well, these things are here. They're going to be figured out, right? And so I'd been asking for a long time, what's coming next? And I think in November I got my answer, and that was, when ChatGPT exploded. That's so what that is. It's a large language model. It's at its most simplest form. If the iPhone democratized access to information, ChatGPT and things along those lines democratized access to artificial intelligence. If you were a computer scientist, you had access to this technology for a while, but it was sort of like in the shadows, or you needed to be technical to use it. And now everybody and their mother is using ChatGPT to craft emails, to write speeches, to
do art.
create art, to write story, to write children's book. I mean, it's absolutely out of control how quickly it went from 0 to 2,000 miles an hour. And
so tell me how that works. Give me just a simple, let's use children's books. So what happens?
So, I mean, you fire up ChatGPT, right? And there's a free version and a paid version, and you fire it up, and it's just a website. Through OpenAI. Yeah, it's just a website. And I mean, it's an app built into a website, but it's just a website. You log on, and you just you can start with typing a prompt. Write me a 500 word children's book about X, and it will spit it out. Now, here's the thing. Where we're going with this, with this space is, anybody can ask it to do something and they're going to get a result. The thing that's really, really important to understand is the better question that you ask it, the better result you're going to get. Right? So this is the new calculator. This is going to replace search engines. This is going to replace a lot of interesting things. But the skill to develop around this is what they call prompt engineering. How do you whisper to this sort of magical technology and get back what you want? Or and that's the skill that I think young people and anybody who's really interested in this space should be developing right now.
Yeah, I think the difficulty for people, and it always has been, which I love that you're filling this space, is like they don't see the utility in it, or it seems kind of crazy. And we're still stuck back. Man, it's so interesting to talk about, but it's like most of the people who have any ability to do anything about it, their timeline for all this is the last 10 years, right? The last 16 years, I think we said, with 2007. So their experience on Earth, but their experience on the Earth is so slow.
Mm-hmm.
But the kids that I just talked to today in high school, they know how fast it is. So they want to know these things because they know it's going to, their experience has been everything in their life shifting every year, every 2 years, man, their whole childhood. They're not like, oh, we went from this to this and it happened really fast. That's just life for them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so you're in this, amazing niche, but also I think it's going to be something that you're ahead of. And I think it's going to be really, really awesome, man, because you're right. Like, even as you say this to me, I'm like, I know what that is personally, but I know the people listening to this are like, what? That's insane. And also, how is that going to help anything? And that's the question, right?
That's right. That's right. The thing is, it's there's very few use cases that you can't come up with a use for. Like, you could say, I have these 10 things in my refrigerator. Give me 5 ideas, or write me a recipe to use these things, and you're going to get something usable. It could. It's been used in legal situations right now. Like, I don't know if this happened yet or was being worked on. It was the first time an AI was going to be used to defend a human in court. When you think about, imagine a lawyer using AI that has access to all the case law ever written. Do you think that person has a leg up over somebody who doesn't have access to that?
Yeah. Right? How would I defend this question? How would I defend this argument based on case law?
Absolutely.
Oh, man, that's crazy.
There are so many potential use cases. You can even go into ChatGPT and say, give me 10 ideas to use ChatGPT, and it'll start generating stuff, and you can have a conversation with it. Now, I'm keeping in mind that it's not sentient yet. It doesn't know what you're saying necessarily, but it will you can interact with it and it has memory and history, which is absolutely wild. So if you don't like what you get back from it, ask it in a different way, or say, try again. Or
yeah. So talk me through that. So that, now we're getting into really blowing people's minds. So talk through, how that shifts from that to AI to sentient, and what is the conversation early right now? I know it's not early. People have been having it for a decade, but a lot of people have no clue, and it's early to them. And I think that's part of the problem is those people like you are in tech, people in therapy, people in psychology, people in the world, like we're having these conversations in our little vacuums, and we see it happening already and moving. And yet the basic world, they have no clue. They think that's 40 years from now. Yeah. Or they're thinking back to Terminator and Skynet and,
right.
whatever.
Right.
So talk to me about that. Like, what do you think about that? Where do you think we're going in the AI sentient kind of thing? And what are the pros, and then what are some of the fears you have?
Yeah. Well, this is a great question, and it's something that this is one of the things that we really have so we have got modules on different topics, things like AI, things like virtual reality, genetic engineering, and in the AI module, one of the things that we really ask kids to explore is this idea of the challenges and the opportunities, right? So looking at projecting forward with an AI that is as competent as a human in, or much more in a lot of tasks, what are the opportunities and what are the challenges in that space? My personal views on it are like a lot of people like Elon and Kurzweil. Listen, we are developing this technology faster than we can build the guide rails around it.
Right.
And I think that's really dangerous. Because listen, when you look at what Congress looks like, what the Senate looks like, what the lawmakers look like, they don't understand this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
They can't. Our politicians don't understand this stuff, and they're being tasked with building laws around it and protections around it. It's certainly not the people developing it that are most focused on the safety of it, right. Just by design, right?
Yeah, they're risk takers.
They're trying to push the envelope of what it can do. And hopefully there's people around that are saying, well, listen, if you solve that problem, if you get it to do what you want it to do, how does that impact the rest of the world? Or how does that impact anything?
Well, that's what we didn't do with the phone, right? So one of the things I'm trying to show people is like the phone went from, 2006 or 2007 one night, Razor phone, to iPhone the next day. And it's not like we took a small population of people and we're like, hey, let's give them smartphones and let's track them for a year and see how this goes.
That's right.
We're 13 years into it, and 10 years really into kids having it and at a mass level. And the suicide rate and the self-harm rate and the depression and anxiety and addiction rate are all at the roof. And so it's like, we can't keep doing that.
Right.
And we can, but it's problematic.
There's no way we're not. I don't see a way that we're not going to keep doing that, unfortunately, right? What I see as the solution is if we develop enough critical mass of people that are continuing to ask those questions, that aren't just accepting this stuff or these advancements as safe.
That's a great way to say it, man. That's good. Keep going.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's what it is. I've had the privilege to through this group that I belong to called Alder. It used to be called Gen Next. We would have dinners, sort of monthly dinners with some just absolutely incredible people, from the director of the NSA to Adam Shire, who invented Siri, who's in your Siri in your phone, right? He's the inventor of that. To this guy Aubrey de Grey, who was the CEO of the SENS Foundation, doing the leading research on curing aging. Right, billions of dollars spent on this. And the point that I want to make is, with all these incredible people, I always ask this question of that almost what I just said to you was, if you solve what you're trying to solve, who's doing the consequential thinking around that?
Yeah.
Who's working on like the other side of like, what happens if? And I never got a good answer.
Because you were that guy.
I was asking the question. But I never got a good answer from them. Like Aubrey, you've solved aging. People can now live to 1,000 or indefinitely. Who solves the problem of all the problems that occur
we could
from
list
that?
a lot real quick, right?
Yeah, right.
Population control being one.
I mean, there's so many, and the question is, there's very few people doing that thinking, and that's what our program is designed for, is to develop consequential thinkers.
It's so good, man. This is such a niche.
So that's the only solution I can think of to solve that problem. Is it has to come from the people.
Yeah, you're right, because we're gonna keep doing what we're doing, and in mass, right? I mean, it's not that there aren't people like you, and there aren't people who want to change that, but you're right. We have to mass produce healthy people, and that's your lane, and my lane is the same way on the psychology and the therapy and the protection. It's like we have to mass produce people who see the phone and see social media and see porn and see all these things as things that, like, you have to control and be really good at micromanaging, or it's going to kill you and defeat you, because we can't win against AI. Like, we can't win against algorithms. We can't win against.
That's right.
It's not about how smart you are, how caring you are, how big your heart is.
Yeah. You're
not going to win.
Right.
And so if you don't go into it going, I can't defeat this thing unless I have particular things. But, it's funny because I think, like, we're doing the same thing in totally different areas, but that are going to impact, I think, the two most important things that our society can do going forward. You know what I mean? Like, I know you feel that way.
I do.
You know what I mean? You're like, if we don't do this, you guys just don't know where we're going.
Yeah.
And I'm saying the same thing on the other side with the mental health part. I'm like, if we don't address this as bodies of people, our children don't stand a chance in the next 5 to 10 years.
Absolutely. Completely. And it doesn't get better. It doesn't get safer. None of these things inherently make our world better. Like, what was the promise of email and computers? That it would free up time so that you could, well, whatever. I don't know what you're supposed to do at that time, but has that worked for you, Clint?
No.
You know what I mean? Yeah. So inherently, these tools are not, I mean, listen, we live in an age where we, generally speaking, we have more access to healthcare and food and abundance than at any time in history. So I don't want to downplay, like, the technological advancement inherently isn't good. I don't want to downplay that, because I do believe that there is a nugget of truth in there. But these tools and these technologies in and of themselves, maybe they carry with them like a vapor of danger, or there's some hidden dangers in them. Pandora's box.
I hear your hesitancy. Is your hesitancy because there's so much pushback from the people who love that stuff and who
No, I mean, I'll tell you why. Because listen, my father and my family live in New Jersey, right? And if it weren't for the smartphone, I wouldn't get to see him as often as I do. My daughter wouldn't get to see him as often as we do, right? We video chat, we text, we call all the time, right? So that technology has created something or enabled something beautiful that otherwise wouldn't be possible.
Yep.
Right. So, but at the same time, it can be really evil, right?
Yes.
So.
No, I love it. You're holding the tension that we're all holding, is that it is a, I say, like, in one of the chapters in the book I was writing, I was talking about the difference between exposure and immersion. Mm-hmm. And I think that's one thing that our society hasn't figured out. Like, people will push back on me about, like, addiction and depression and all the things, bullying, and they're like, these have always happened. And I'm like, yes, all of these things have happened. Mm-hmm. But the tools that we now have to immerse people in these traumas and in these abuses and in these exposures is insane. Yeah. And so you might have, been bullied at school on the week, during the week, and then you go home on the weekend and for the summer and you're not worried about it.
Right.
But today you're bullied all day long, every day on Instagram.
24 hours a day. That's right.
You might have seen something inappropriate online once or in a magazine somewhere at somebody's house, or on a VHS tape, or on a movie that somebody played.
Yeah.
But now these kids have their phones at 10 and 12 and are looking at whatever they want to. And so it's people have to understand that our exposure, right, is so immersed, and that's what's shifting.
Yeah.
Yes, it's not good to see any
that.
of that, but like now they're not just seeing it, they're living in it.
That's right.
And so I think what you're trying to create is building children and, teens and young adults that can live in that immersion and navigate it, because that immersion's not going away.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you for that. Yes.
Yeah. Does that make sense?
It 100% it does. Okay. I completely agree. And it made me think of something, that there's this degree of innocence that has just been erased from kids, from generations of kids. You know what I mean?
Yes.
They see at the earlier and earlier ages, they see things and are exposed to things that 30 years ago they just wouldn't have. Yep. They would have remained innocent for a lot longer, and maybe that's healthier, maybe not. I don't know. I mean, I think it may be, but if we can't give them back innocence, we can at least give them confidence and resilience and a stronger sense of humanity. And I think, it sounds like I know that's what you're doing as well, and it's certainly what we're trying to do here. I mean, our program is a lot about technology and communication, but there's a big component in there that is designed to build this foundation of resilience against what the world, all the sharp edges in the world right now. And there are more and more sharp edges every day.
Yeah, man, that's so good. Yeah, I love that it has such a good balance of being about technology and hitting your focus, while at the same time building in the emotional intelligence and the relational intelligence that's going to need to for them to have families and have lives and do a good job at work. And that's the stuff that brings us joy and peace. It's not our bank account and our name on the door or whatever the thing is.
Right.
And so, I mean, that's a huge shift. I think
it's important.
Yeah. Oh, no doubt. And I think that, we're opening their eyes to that. And I guess that goes back to that kind of immersion, exposure thing, but it's
I love that concept.
Well, resiliency. I was literally just talking about this morning to that group of students, but it's people are like, yes, there's parents who are I hear this all the time. They're like, well, tough love, because the world's not going to treat them well. So, we got to prepare them for the world, or, let them be exposed to this stuff because the world's going to eat them up, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay, let's just talk about this real simple. There is a spectrum. Resiliency certainly is built in you from difficulty. Mm-hmm. But if you push too far into extreme difficulty, you collapse.
Yeah, just it becomes trauma and not
just
something to fight against.
Exactly. And too much comfort's great, and you want to have peace and safety, but too much comfort kills you as well. Mm-hmm. And so I think you're trying to find the balance in how do or the world's not changing, right? Or going back, it's going to continue to spiral and change. So how do we give resiliency without overexposing them to these things and making these things the problem, keeping the human beings at the center of the problem, and asking great questions like, if you answer this, I love that. If you answer this, then what about these things? And teaching kids to ask that question. Because I think, and this is just, my thing from a Christian perspective, is that's how God designed us, is to look out for each other and be in relationship with each other and to ask that question. It can't just be Clint came up with this great idea. It can be great for me. It can make me good money, and to hell with whatever it does to anybody else. We have to constantly ask that question of, I am not an island, right?
That's right.
I am connected to the other people. And in my talks, I'm like, your kid seeing things online, then tells my kid, then exposes my kid. We're all connected, and we've got to move. It's so crazy, but we got to move back from that Americanized individual focus back to a communal lens in all of these areas.
Yeah. And the word we use in our program is a global citizen, this idea of being a global citizen. You're not you're an American, and it's important to, to have these identities. And yes, I live in San Diego, and yes, my family is that, but I'm a citizen of the world, and we are all brothers and sisters here. And that is an incredibly important thing to remember, because when it's forgotten, really bad things happen. Really bad. Nothing good comes from forgetting that.
Absolutely, man. Yeah. Who we find our identity in and what we find our identity in is going to shape everything. And if you look at the world and life in the consequences that come from finding your worth and your value in whatever, your gender, your job, your ethnicity. Like those things are great things, but they're not your identity. They're part of who you are.
That's right.
They make up they're beautiful, amazing parts, and those differences shouldn't be hidden or shamed. They should be looked at and celebrated as a friend. But when you find your identity and your worth in those things, then you lose the communal aspect because you're just so self-focused. And I think we've swung from a culture and a world where children especially were to be seen, not heard. They weren't to have an identity. They were just to kind of grow up and provide whatever they needed to help the parents survive. And then in psychology, we pushed really hard to the other side, which is a lot of what we see right now, which is let me validate everything you think.
Hearing everything you're saying.
Exactly. Everything you saying here. And me and you talked about this at dinner, right?
Yeah.
And was it your uncle?
Yeah, he was my uncle.
Your uncle was like asking me like, where's the balance?
That's right.
Yeah. And that's what we're trying to find. So dude, I love what you're doing. We're going to keep connecting, and I need to find a way to send people to you. Do you have an online portion of that, or is it all in person?
Absolutely. Yeah, so it's done through one-on-one. So it's all online, first of all. So great. It's all online and rolling, and it's done through one-on-one coaching and an online curriculum that's developed for the kids. Giant Leaps Learning. You can giantleapslearning.com. You can find out more there, and or connect with me, and I'd love to hear from you, Michael at Giant Leaps Learning. I'd love to hear from anybody and answer some questions. Yeah,
I'm gonna talk to you off book about some of this stuff because we got to find a way to connect, and for me to push this because, man, I would love to send clients to you, send people to you, get people working on this stuff because it makes my job so much easier. You want to do therapy, you want to work on trauma, and there's people like you and pieces like you and coaches and different things that's like, okay, I can't talk about all this in our session. We need to be talking about what we need to be talking about.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, man. I really appreciate you. I know you got a hard stop in like 3 minutes, so I'm going to give you that time. Guys, look him up. It's going to be awesome. I think you're going to love what he has. Watch his TED Talk. It's on YouTube.
Broken Promise of Education.
Broken Promise of Education. Look that up. Share it with your friends. I'm going to post it on our page again. I posted it a couple times, but I'm going to reshare it on our stories this week, and so you guys can check him out because what he's doing. If you love me and you love what I'm doing, you love our podcast, you're going to love what Michael's doing. It's in the same vein with the same heart, and I hope to look up, man, in 10 years and us still be friends and us still be talking about this and see how much of an impact we've made on people's lives, and feel like we've saved some souls and some lives in this mess that we have. So thank you guys. God bless, and have a good week.